Hello everyone, today we have new video review, and as you can see this time we are going to talk about fresh release from ICM. It's a kit in 135 scale, it's a kit number 35002 and it copies Soviet 6-wheel army truck with a shelter. So it's quite an interesting release for those who love to build some interesting dioramas, and we have a commercial sample here, so it means you'll get exactly the same stuff as what you'll see in this video review. Moreover, kit should be already available for purchase, so you can get it in Matelimex, for example. And you can notice that box size is quite standard for this brand. Here we have some information about the kit, and there are 363 parts for assembly of this truck. Obviously there will be some assembly options, and here on the side you can see let's say marking option. As you can see, two variant shades of gray and also Camouflage Truck if you prefer, but obviously you're not limited by that, and we will check the marking guide in the assembly manual later when we will be taking a look at the whole assembly manual pages. For now, I suggest to start with plastic sprues, because packaging here is quite standard for ICM, and we get all the frames in one plastic bag, and you can see it's a bit of a tight packaging, but still parts seems to be intact, nothing was broken, and I think we can open it right now and take a look at the first sprue. Here you can notice that we have parts for the front cap. And overall design, I would say pretty much straightforward. So we have separate doors, we have separate front and rear panels. Of course, roof is also separate, as well as the floor panel. And the only thing which might be, let's say, a bit dangerous is the alignment of all this stuff together. That's why I would recommend to do it in a dry fitting first and then gluing everything together into the proper connection. But it's really nice molding quality, and I can see that attachment points are also reduced to the possible minimum. Moreover, they are quite thin, so I don't think you will have any issues here. And I mean, if you use the plastic saw or sharp cutters, you should be completely fine. And the only thing which might be a bit tricky is masking, because I'm not sure if this kit actually includes the masks for the transparent parts, meaning glasses of the front cap. So we will see it in the assembly manual. And note also that there is no manufacturer logo on the grille. As far as I remember, real truck also does not feature Kamaz logo on the front. But of course, feel free to, let's say, write your opinion about this in the comment section, because it would be also cool to discuss with you. Here, by the way, you can take a look at the opposite side. So there are various guiding elements, and that's why it will be more or less easy to align these panels. Just do not hurry with such stuff, because it requires some time to settle, and that's why it's better to use the proper glue, which will catch faster parts together. Next, we continue with the second plastic sprue. So this one is dedicated to various suspension parts and engine parts, as far as I can see. So we have here a quite detailed exhaust, and yes, the engine should be also included. Frankly speaking, I'm not sure how it will be possible to expose it, because on Kamaz you have to tilt the front cap up front, but still it's nice to have it inside. Maybe you'll find a way how to expose it on your model, or maybe at least how to hint that there is an engine inside. So here you can take a closer look at all these parts. Again, molding quality is pretty much on the same level as what we saw on the first sprue. There is no surprise in that. But still, I appreciate that ICM tried to reduce the amount of connection points to the possible minimum. We do not have like 8 connection points for small parts. And by the way, about the small parts, do not be fooled by the 35 scale, because we have a lot of thin and small elements. That's why you should be careful. And here, for example, you can see quite thin frames in a triangular shape. So definitely use the plastic saw and maybe sharp knife to clean them up. And if you break them, obviously it will be quite a tricky stuff to repair, because it's really difficult to copy this shape with your own tools and means. But still, I mean, it's a kit which is more suitable for experienced modelers, in my opinion. That's why I don't think that these parts will pose a lot of challenge for them. But for beginners, it might be a bit tough. Next, we continue with another plastic sprue. Actually, there are several of them, so here you can see them both. And obviously, they are dedicated to pair parts, because here we have some parts for the main chassis. We also have some parts for the rear section. And again, it's just a matter of combining this, let's say, bars together. And now we are going to take a closer look. So here we zoom in, and you can notice that we have mud guards. We also have some parts for the outer features. And as far as you can see, there are some extra parts, so I'm not sure if all of them will be used. We will have to see it in the assembly manual. And if some will stay in your spare parts box, it's also quite nice thing, because you will be able to use them later in your future builds or maybe some scratch builds. But again, note the surface details, they are quite nice and they deserve proper painting and weathering in order to bring out these features. And by the way, all the tiny holes are drilled out, so you don't have to do all the holes with your own tools, and that's also something I can appreciate. Next, we continue with the clear sprue. It comes in the separate plastic bag in order to avoid any possible scratches. So here we have these squares for the rear part, because it also features the windows in the top section. That's why these parts are not that big. And again, I'm not sure if the masks are included into this set, so we will have to check it thoroughly in the assembly manual. But here is the second clear plastic sprue, so basically there are two of them. And this one carries parts for the front cap, and you can see that it's also quite nice, pretty much the same level of quality of what we saw before on the first sprue. We have also lenses for the headlamps and tail lights. Windscreen looks really cool, and here you can see side windows. Obviously, with such parts you won't be able to replicate the folded down windows, just like on some other kits, but still, I mean, you can open doors. It should be also quite an interesting feature to add in a 1/35 scale truck. Next, we continue with another gray plastic sprue. So here we have various parts for the external accessories, let's say, because we have a heater for the rear section, also a few jerry cans and various handles. So everything looks fine in my opinion. And here you can take a closer look so that you can see that these parts are detailed nicely. Maybe you can, let's say, think through how to make a smooth connection between some holes, but I don't think that it will be a difficult item to assemble. Moreover, you can play with weathering on these parts. It will be also important to add a bit more realistic appearance to this thing. But otherwise, even this thin bar is molded nicely. And maybe, by the way, with this thin bar, you can replace it completely with a metal wire. It will give you even more, let's say, freedom with various damages and also replicating the metal touch. But again, it's your decision, because even the standard plastic part looks fine, but attachment points are on the outer edge. So that's why you have to be extra careful in order not to damage it, especially when you'll be cleaning it from the connection dots. But other than that, I do not see possible issues here. And still there is a huge, let's say, space for super detailing. So definitely think through what you would like to add on your model, because it will only benefit your build and make it a bit more realistic in appearance. Next, we continue with this thing. So I hope you understand that if we have the plastic rims, it means we do not have plastic tires. And that's something what might be a bit tricky about this build. Of course, there is some aftermarket solutions available made out of resin, so you can buy them, but it will mean spending extra on your build. And here you can take a closer look at these wheel rims. They look fine, and moreover, such design will make it possible to paint them without using any masks. You just paint them or airbrush in the necessary color shade and you're good to go, and then you just insert them in the vinyl tires. But again, if you want the better details, just go for the resin upgrade. It will be worth it, because this truck has quite big wheels and it will be visible on the finished kit, and therefore it's worth investing into such upgrade. Next, we continue with a bigger plastic sprue. So here you can see large bars for the main chassis. We also have parts for the air cylinders, for the engine, and also for some suspension elements. And that's something what might be a bit, let's say, cumbersome, because all these features look cool and don't get me wrong, it's actually a quite nice thing to get out of the box, but I'm not sure how to expose all this stuff on the finished model, and it would be sad to hide, for example, this engine under the front cap as we discussed, so that's why it's worth thinking how to expose it, maybe in some diorama scene, or maybe to make the front cap movable, maybe something else. So definitely think about it if you want to work on the internals as well. If you don't want, then you can just insert it inside, paint it in a, let's say, easy way, and just forget about it. Next, here you can see some of the suspension parts. Again, a lot of things are copied out of the box, and that's actually a good thing. Even though the parts count was not that huge, still in 1/35 scale we get a lot of features copied out of the box. And you can notice again that even these large parts, they're placed on 2 attachment points, so it makes it easier to separate them without actually damaging the elements. And the frame bars, they're molded together with leaf springs. Also something what should make the overall alignment of the suspension and of the wheel axles a bit easier. But again, you'll have to track the fitment between the middle bars. So basically you use the main chassis bars and connect them in between. And that's why it's better to do the dry fitment in order to get the right alignment between these large parts. And it will be quite important because the whole structure will depend on it. And then you might have problems with the rear section fitment or maybe with the front cap fitment. So it's better to be safe and check everything before the assembly. Moreover, you can assemble it as a separate section, so that's why it will be even easier to track the possible issues and then to fix them without getting any problems in visible areas, let's say. Here, by the way, you can take a closer look on the opposite side. It's also quite nice. And that's why I think it's just a matter of getting them together, and maybe even out of the box build should be a nice looking project which will be enough for a solo project or maybe for some diorama. As you remember, this kit does not feature any figures out of the box, so maybe you can find something suitable even in the ICM range, or maybe get some resin figures to add to this truck. Next, we continue with even bigger panels which will be used for the rear section. So I would say that's quite a reasonable design, but still it will require due care in order to get such large panels fitting properly between each other. Again, we have alignment elements inside. We also have the separate door, which is also quite a handy feature. As you remember, all the windows are copied with clear parts, and external features, they're also nice looking. So again, you can replicate some weathering here, or maybe you can copy the fresh truck, which was just submitted to the army. And here, by the way, you can see from the opposite side. So these are actually these guiding elements which I was talking about. So as you can see, it's just a matter of inserting the parts into the right slots and you'll be good to go. Next, you know that I'm loving the vinyl parts, and here we have vinyl tires, and frankly speaking, they're not as bad as they could be, but still, as I said before, it's better to get the resin replacement. As you can see, we have 7 wheels because there is also a spare wheel as well. And these tires, they do feature nice tire protector, but on the sides, as you can see here, we have only basic, let's say, layout. We do not have any logos or tire manufacturer name, nor the tire sizing. And that's something what you actually get on the resin wheels upgrade. So that's why I'm recommending to get it, because this model, in my opinion, deserves such upgrade. And it will make it a bit more realistic. Next, we continue with the decal sheet. So this one is printed in a quite small format, but here we have all necessary symbols for several marking options. Also, we have dials for the interior, and I'm not sure where it was printed, but printing quality is nice, just as usual for ICM, so there is nothing to worry about. Maybe decal softener will be helpful in some areas, but I mean, this truck is quite plain, so that's why it will be easy to apply all these decals without any extra issues, let's say. Next, we continue with assembly manual. So this one is printed in form of large brochure. On the first page, we have short history note, a lot of pages inside, and marking guide on the rear page. So let's start. First, we are going to start with the assembly manual and surprisingly, well, with the parts map. And surprisingly, there are not that many parts which are unused. They are usually marked with the red color. Here you can see, for example, 4 parts. And then on the next page, you can see that almost all parts are used. But as you remember, we had more frames, so that's why it will be interesting to see what is on the next page. And here, by the way, you can see these front cap parts. So let's flip over the page. And here we have more red areas. So some clear parts even will stay in your spare parts box. And as you can see, some large parts will be also unused because they're designed for use with an open rear section truck. And today we have a closed one. And here, by the way, you can see the clear parts and this F sprue with various suspension parts. Okay, so next is the assembly process. And as far as you can see, it starts with the main chassis. So here we will have to assemble all the necessary items to be inserted in between bars. And that's why it will be important to think through how you would like to paint it or maybe weather it, because later it might be a bit tricky. And therefore, all the painting sequences should be thought in advance, because otherwise you will have to work with a thin brush, and that's not a pleasant procedure, let's say. So here, by the way, you can see the front bumper bar being installed into the place. Next, we start working on the engine. And again, I remind you that engine is quite detailed. You can even add some wiring here and it will be even more, I would say, attractive. But again, it's important to think how to expose all this stuff, because otherwise you will just do a lot of work in vain, which will be hidden under the front cap. Next, we continue with this radiator, which is assembled separately and inserted between front bumper and the engine. Next is the exhaust tube, and it is also installed in advance on the chassis and of course connected with an engine. So with exhaust, I would recommend for sure to play with weathering, because it shouldn't be clean. So that's why it's important to show that it's kind of distressed. Next, we continue with wheel axles. So these ones are for the rear. And as you can see, their assembly is quite straightforward. Just do not forget to assemble all these tiny parts in place. Of course, this suspension is not movable. So if you would like to depict the truck on some, let's say, rough terrain, you have to think through how to make all this stuff movable, maybe modify parts slightly. But again, it's a more of a, let's say, difficult stuff, maybe something for experienced modelers, so I would not recommend to go for it if you don't have a previous experience of modifying the original plastic. Next, we continue with this side box. We assemble also these air cylinders for the suspension, fuel tank, which is assembled out of several panels, mud guards for the front, going at the same time, and then we installing them from the opposite side as well. So fuel tank and air cylinders are also installed from the both sides. And next we continue. Really a lot of pages, a lot of stuff to do, to be honest. But here you can see the assembly of wheels. So it's a matter of combining 3 parts together if you count the vinyl tire. Here, by the way, you can see the spare wheel getting installed into the place. As you can see, it is fixed with a special bracket. Then we have all the wheels installed in place, and basically that's where you can switch to the front cab assembly. And in my opinion, this sequence poses quite an interesting, let's say, chance to assemble the front cab separately, paint it separately, and then just install it onto the main chassis. But of course, the final solution will be after you. Here, by the way, you can see the overall design, which is quite interesting because first we assemble floor and side panels, then we install the rear, then we install the wheel fenders, then we continue with the front wall, and note that wind screen is going into the place as well because it's installed from inside. Next, we install the steering wheel column, and it is also assembled out of several parts, which is quite interesting for such simple thing, I would say. And next, we proceed with doors. So for the doors, we have the assembly option to get it in the open or closed position, which is quite handy in case you would like to show what is inside your truck, of course. Or maybe you would like to place the figure or maybe depict the driver getting out of the truck, then it will be handy. On the rear side, we install this air intake, and next we proceed with the screen wipers, headlamps. And by the way, it is interesting that screen wipers are made with plastic, so maybe you will think through how to upgrade them with the PE parts. And here on the next steps, you can see how the rear section is assembled. So as you remember, these are quite large panels and they should be combined together. Everything starts with the floor and side panels, then we add rear and the front and close everything with a separate roof. By the way, the doors are also separate, but manufacturer does not show the possibility to open, because basically we are not provided with anything to place inside of this section. So that's why if you want to open it, you have to think through what to place inside, otherwise it will be just an empty box inside. Next, we proceed with various additional items on this rear section. Mud guards, I can see various panels and also storage boxes. Next, we continue with more stuff getting installed on the rear. And again, here you can see that these doors look strange in the closed position. Obviously, it is more interesting to open them, and I wonder if ICM will actually produce this set of maybe interiors separately to be placed in the rear side. Next, we continue with this heater on the top, and as you can see, it's also a several parts assembly process, which is quite funny. For such simple thing, they still decided to copy all the features. And next, we continue with the same stuff, but from the opposite side. So yes, it might look a bit tedious, but all these minor features, they actually add up to the overall appearance of the truck. And here, by the way, you can see the installation of all this stuff on the main chassis. So here you can see the first assembly options, not the marking option. So you can assemble the truck with a tilted front cap, which is quite interesting option. And here you can see how it will look like. And of course you can assemble it with a closed one. Here you can see with open doors as well. And that's the first marking option, which is supplied in this kit. Full green truck, another one with a slightly different shade of green for the rear section. Maybe it shows that it was modified later. And here we have a camouflage truck, which might be also an interesting option to copy because of such interesting camouflage, of course. So this set, as I said before, should be already available on ModeliMax webshop. You can get it there right now. Of course, I will be happy to hear your opinion about such release. Do not forget to write it in the comment section below. If you like this video, press the like button and share with your friends. And of course, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video review as usual. Thank you for joining me today, and bye.